Well, it was refreshing having a hotel room for the night, being indoors and dry, some hot food. But after struggling with making sure that the upload went, we finally got on the road. But again, it was a little late. It was closer to 11 than I would have liked. And I decided I wasn't going to go up to Bradford to see the Zippo place, arguing that it would still be there later on, so I could always just go back later. And so we took off for Southern Ohio. A lot of the early drive was just forest right along the road. And every once in a while you'd get long views, but it wasn't very often. You know, these small towns are still very amazing to me. How they still have main streets and very grand, beautiful buildings. I mean, look at this church. And then you continue on for a little bit, back through some main street, before you find the courthouse. Well, I think that's a bank, but that's a courthouse. get some last minute beautiful views of some mountains. I mean, I guess if you live there, you don't really appreciate the view, but I could not get over how beautiful it is, and that's been throughout my travels. Everywhere I go, I cannot get over how beautiful the country is. So as is always the case, we were actually on our way to a Walmart here. I needed a sweatshirt because, the jacket gets a little hot. But I also needed a hard drive because the video files were too large for my little computer. I mean, the views are absolutely spectacular when you can catch them. But otherwise, it's just road hemmed in by forest. Every once in a while, with a wide open, beautiful field and creek. But otherwise, just road and forest. So lucky it was a beautiful day, because the night before, getting rained on for hours and hours was a bit tiring. I had so much footage from the 11th that it just didn't make sense to stop and look at all the different views. So I only did so many of those, but otherwise this video would have been a couple of hours long instead of just under an hour. And as we're going along here, we're actually approaching the Allegany National Forest, if we're not already in it at this point. I don't think we are, but yeah, the Allegany National Forest, which is apparently a really big spot for riding your motorcycle through. I was just passing through, not there for the riding, so... That's something I was thinking about while recording earlier, was that with a bike on a motorcycle, you're not passing through, you're a part of it. You can smell the forest, you can smell the road, the rain, the grass. If you're passing through an orchard, the orchard, or like here, you can smell a massive body of water. And you don't get that in a car. Like, you're not in the environment in a car, but you are on a bike.
were some beautiful roads that morning, and I was really sad that the camera battery did not last very long at all, because I could have done a whole episode just on this part of my morning ride on the 11, especially now that I know how to do 360 footage. But it was a beautiful morning of riding. And we did, in fact, make it to Walmart no problem. And after Walmart, riding definitely did change.
Yes, Titusville, where oil was discovered. I mean, everyone knew what oil was, but, hey, this is the industrial use of oil, not the, we're just gonna set this on fire and throw it at other people use of oil. Titusville, in western Pennsylvania, which is where I was here. Clearly, it was discovered in 1859, so that's why you saw it on that roof. But it was a really, really cool little town. It is also where I had one of those interactions that just stuck with me, like those two riders on the bike in the rain the day before. This one stuck with me. I was jamming out to my music, just bobbing my head. I look over and here's this dude. Oh, I had a lot of fun there. That was very enjoyable. Some of the old factories. Seemed like this was a production area of Titusville. Not really in downtown, away from downtown by the river. But it does have a really cool bridge. I like that bridge. You guys know I'm an at-gat guy. All the gear, all the time. You know, there are times where you might want to make a personal exception. You know, when the weather is extremely hot, sometimes you'll want to just wear a vest, which, as long as it's leather, does provide protection, but, you know, your arms are gone. But one piece of equipment you should always be wearing are earplugs, because you don't want to lose your hearing to the wind noise or the engine noise. I had forgotten to put my earplugs back in after Walmart, so I had to stop, because I wasn't going to be stopping for a while. It was highway time now.
still jamming out the tunes, I can tell you that. And still enjoying a beautiful day. Again with those beautiful views. Just could not get over how great that day was, looking back on it now. FYI, those guys didn't wave. That guy did. I really enjoy these kind of roads, these state highways. Just a 2-lane country road that just goes on forever. These are the best roads, in my opinion. shame that the files for 360 videos are so large, because I just upload these rides so you guys can just look wherever you please, because the scenery is amazing in every direction, but I'd spend way too much time editing if I were to try and find the best view for each part of this video. As you can see, we're now on a highway. Pretty sure this is US 6. Yeah, there's not much to highway riding, besides just going in the same direction, completely without very much in the way of views. The highways aren't about the experience, they're about getting places fast. Well, it was time for Betsy to get a drink. So that's what we're gonna do. That's right, the final leg. Betsy and I are in Ohio at this point. And it's been a long day, a highway ride. Like a wave gets a nod because my hand's on the clutch. But that's right, we were not far from our destination. I was really lucky that the day was such a beautiful day, considering both other days I've been on the road. I just got rained on the whole afternoon, so a dry day was a very nice day. I'm not having a seizure, everybody. I'm just singing along to music. In a way, these kind of roads are nice. Sure, you don't really get to see much. They're just straight, flat, maybe a nice, long, gentle curve in them. But I guess these roads can be nice. And as always, you do end up with a beautiful view every once in a while on these roads. It pretty much sums up Ohio, though. Flat and wide open. I know that truck. Goodbye, truck. Microwave. Still don't know why there was a plane on that. The roads around here in Ohio remind me of the roads in Pennsylvania. They were not very good roads. One thing about riding all day is that the first part of the ride, you're good for a few hours before your butt goes numb and you just have to shift in the saddle. Then the next part of the trip, it's a little bit less time, and then a little bit less time, and then a little bit less time, and then by the time you're at the end of the day, at least the time I'm by the end of the day, it's a very short amount of time before my butt goes numb and I start fidgeting in the saddle. But thankfully, this is towards the end of my day. There is something to be said about being on the road like this. I mean, it's free. I mean, I am not passing through the landscape. I'm a part of the landscape here. There's nothing between me and the world. Get feeling back. This guy towing the car was nice enough to pull off and out of the way when he found a spot to do so. Let me pass him. Because I get to do this. But that was the end of July 11th.